Hello and welcome to another episode of Unmuted. I'm your host, Courtland Warren. I was recently asked a question of what is the difference between motion and action? And I asked the person to repeat the question again because I was at first a little thrown off by it. And they repeated the question. What is the difference between being in motion and being in action? And once I thought about it just briefly, I said, well, in truth, ultimately, the difference between being in motion and being in action is the difference between success and failure. The reality is that a person can be in motion, meaning they're busy, they're moving, but not in a particular direction. A person in action is headed someplace. There is a clearly defined destination. And so being in motion and being in action are definitely not the same. And ultimately, the difference between the two is success and failure. You've perhaps seen people, or maybe you've experienced it yourself. There's a lot going on, very, very busy, but nothing getting done. Right? It's the idea of being woo busy, like, how are you? Woo, busy. What's getting done? Woo, nothing. So being in motion is not the same as being in action. And so we explore that in this episode of Unmuted. I'm grateful that you decided to join in. So let's first begin with an idea, an analogy of what the difference is, or the distinction between these two, what could seem similar, but they're actually not. And so imagine now that once upon a time in a small village, there were two friends, and we'll call them Jack and Tom. They both had big dreams and aspirations, but their approach to achieving them was very different. You see, Jack was a person of action. He was always busy working on his goals, taking small steps every day to move closer to his dreams. He was focused, determined, and never gave up, even when things got tough. Now his buddy Tom on the other hand, was a man of motion. He was always busy planning, thinking, strategizing, but he never actually took action. He was afraid of failure and always found excuses to delay taking that first step. He was seeking like perfectionism, and because it wasn't perfect, he had reason or justification not to even get started. Well, one day, a wise old man comes to the village and offered to help anyone who was willing to take action towards their dreams. Imagine that. Anybody willing to act, I'm here to support you in getting the dreams. Now, Jack immediately jumped at the opportunity and asked the old man for guidance. The old man gave him a map and told him to follow it step by step until he reached his destination. Tom, on the other hand, was skeptical. He had a whole lot of questions. He thought the map was too simple and there must be a catch. He decided to wait and see how Jack would fare before making a decision. And so Jack set out on the journey, following the map diligently. He encountered many obstacles along the way, but he never gave up. He kept pushing forward one step at a time until he finally reached his destination. He achieved his dream and experienced he was overjoyed. Tom, on the other hand, had wasted precious time waiting and watching. He had not taken any action towards his dream and was still stuck in the same place. He realized too late that he had missed his chance and that he would never achieve the dreams if he did not take action. So the moral of the story is simply this: taking action is the key to achieving your dreams. You can plan, you can strategize, you can think all you want. However, if you do not take action, you will never achieve the goals. Like Jack, you must be willing to take even the small steps every day, even when things get tough, and never, ever give up. If you determine that you're not going to give up, if you determine that quitting is not an option, then winning is inevitable. So that when we look at that story, that analogy with Jack and Tom, you can likely relate. Perhaps you've seen people or you've experienced both sides yourself. Some who have a tendency to strategize, to plan, to theorize, and putting it into action never gets done. They can tell you all of the things and all of the ways that it should be. They can give you the theoretical reasons of how it ought to go. This happens a lot in business school, I know. And so, but reality is the rewards go to those who are willing to risk and take action to move in the direction of what they want, even though it's not perfect. I've often been quoted as saying that done is better than perfect. And so this idea of things having to be perfect before we even get started is actually justification for staying stuck. But no one really will take you on about it because why? Well, I'm in motion. I'm working on it. But there really is no level of commitment to I'm working on it. There's no level of commitment and certainty and assurance that a result will be created when I am only at the place of working on it. And so let's explore then some of the distinctions between being in motion and being in action, and then a framework for you to be a person who moves then into action. And so what we do then is when we look at the story of Jack and Tom, a couple of things that we notice. Notice that Jack's success was not immediate. And it also was not without its own obstacles and challenges. See, the idea that we can plan it so perfectly that we don't have difficulty is naive. And sometimes what's happening is we look to put the perfect plan in place. It's got to be exactly right. Why? Because we're looking to avoid challenge. We're looking to avoid obstacle. We don't want to experience pain. We don't want to experience setback. We don't want the feeling of failure. We don't want to subject ourselves to criticism and critique. And so what happens is we will look to, plan and strategize long enough to get it perfect to eliminate those things. Where that's the Tom of the world. But then there's Jack, who's like, you know what? I'm going to be so busy taking action in the direction of my dream. I'm going to be so busy taking action in the direction of the goal that I'll eventually move far enough away that I won't be able to hear what the naysayers and the critics have to say in the first place. So one of the more important things that you can do for yourself, because ultimately we take action for one of two reasons, okay? One or two reasons is why we take action. It's either because we're either looking to avoid pain or we're after the promise of pleasure. So one of the great gifts of self-discovery and introspection that you can give to yourself is to know whether or not you are a pain person or you are a pleasure person. Neither is right or wrong, good or bad, but you want to know for yourself in order to give yourself a directive and then follow it. In order for you to stand out and be different because you're a person who takes action, what you want to know for yourself is, am I a pain person or a pleasure person? It's one of the great gifts that you can give yourself, right? So now 85% or so of people are pain people, meaning they really don't take action. They won't move unless the pain is great enough. And so that's why a lot of times in personal development, there's an emphasis on, well, what's the price? There's an emphasis on what's the pain that you're experiencing? What is it costing you? Why? Because for the overwhelming majority of people, when the price is heavy enough, then we'll do what's necessary. When the pain becomes too great, then we'll do what's necessary. There are those, though, and you may be a pleasure person, who for them it's the promise of what can be. It's the promise of what's available. It's the promise of the dream or goal being fulfilled. And so those individuals are driven more by the pleasure, by the promise of what will be, by the promise of what will come about. And so what you want to know for yourself is, are you a pain person or are you a pleasure person? If you are a pain person, then in an area where you're looking to take action but you're not, where you're looking to take action but you're simply in motion and you want to get yourself into action, then you simply look at what it is costing you to be where you are. What are the prices that you're paying? And if that's not enough, what are the prices that other people are paying? Look at that. What are the prices that your family or your community, perhaps the world, the globe, what are the prices that they are paying for you not being in action? And once you calculate or you determine the prices, then movement becomes inevitable if you're truly a pain person. If you're a pleasure person, then you would paint the scenario, paint the idea of what will be, of what's to come, what will happen when you've achieved the goal or dream, what the celebration will be like, what the acknowledgement of your achievements will be like once you have accomplished whatever that desired outcome is. So you want to know for yourself if whether or not you are a pain person or a pleasure person. Okay. Now it is. So let's look then at first motion, and then we'll come back to action. So with motion, motion can be a form of procrastination, and it can also prevent you from achieving your goals. See, and really, and what's where you want to be mindful of this idea is that no one will really take you on. Okay, no one will really challenge you on being in motion because the optics are good. Okay, it looks good. You look like you're really doing something. It really does appear that you're working and working hard, but very few people will actually challenge you on the fact that you haven't moved any place. Like you're in the same exact spot with maybe a clearer idea, with maybe a clearer picture, but based on results, you're in the same spot. Okay, so it is important to note that you can be busy and not be moving. You can be busy but not be in action. So it's not just, okay, am I filling the time? It goes beyond that. Okay, it goes beyond that. It is important to understand this distinction, because it is, motion versus action is a critical concept, particularly in entrepreneurship, because it can determine whether a business succeeds or fails. Entrepreneurs who are stuck in motion tend to spend a lot of time planning, strategizing, and thinking about their business, but they never actually take action or see things through to fruition. And this can lead to missed opportunities, wasted time, and ultimately failure. Now, on the other hand, entrepreneurs who take action towards their goals are more likely to succeed. Right? They're willing to take the risk. They make the mistakes, learn from their failures. They are persistent and focused and determined to achieve their goals even when things get tough. So you'll hear me a lot of times referring back to the idea of resilience, because it is my viewpoint, and I could be wrong, but it is my viewpoint that resilience is the number one quality of entrepreneurship, and really the number one quality of having a life of meaning, creating a life that matters. Because if you can bounce back from things that cause other people to quit, you have a competitive advantage. And so while a lot of people will look to get everything perfect and right before they even get into action, whereas, and I can definitely say for myself that I'm a person who I'm more apt to move before I'm ready. I'm more apt to figure it out along the way than I am to have it all perfect in my mind and then go out and look to actualize or execute, only to be disappointed when things don't go the way I thought they would from the very beginning. Right? Well, because the textbook says this. Right? This white paper says this. Right? It's supposed to exactly be this way. I know enough to know that is not the case. So, like in the world of entrepreneurship, taking action is essential because it allows you to test your ideas, get feedback, and make adjustments based on what works and what doesn't. See, as long as the motion that you're in is in mind only, then you haven't been out to test it. You don't know if it works. Better yet, you don't know if whether or not your customers actually appreciate it. You don't know that it's actually usable, and so you're not able to come back and test and improve because it's all a mental exercise that you put yourself through. And so, if you want to gain traction in your business that leads to greater opportunity and more growth, then you've got to bring a product to market. Right? It's the least viable option. LVO, the least viable option. Okay, right? What can we do? Or another term in business, the first mover advantage. Like, how do we get out front and then let the marketplace tell you what works and what does not? Because there are a number of times when a great idea in your head doesn't actually have the legs to actually create value in the marketplace. All right. So it is. So let me back up, and then we're going to move into this framework. Okay. Very simple terms, right? Motion, action, both are moving. But what comes to mind for me right now is like being, one person is on a treadmill, okay, and the other is running in a marathon. All right. Both are moving. But for one, the view is the same. And for the other, okay, yeah, it's a lot, ups and downs, a lot of, varying topography and terrain, but they're seeing and experiencing more. So just from the outside looking in, yes, both people are running. But I assure you, one is experiencing differently than the other. And isn't that what life is really about? Isn't it truly about the experiences? Right? Isn't it about having greater options? And so what you have the opportunity to do is to be a person. If you're going to unmute yourself in your life, that's what we're really getting at. You being unmuted is about you being in action, seeing some different terrain. You have been muted or muted yourself through the busy work, through planning, through strategizing, through coming up with ideas, through maybe writing it even in your journal. But it is not until you have the conviction, the boldness, the courage, the risk-taking capacity to bring it to the world, your song, your book, your business, your recipes, your insights, your knowledge, your opinion. It is not until you're willing to bring that to the world. And so when we consider, well, why don't more people do it? More people don't do it because they have more consideration for, quote unquote, they. They have more consideration around the opinions of other people. They have greater considerations about or around what others' viewpoint of them will be. And so my encouragement to you is this. If you'll actually get yourself into action, you won't be able to hear those people for very long because you will have gotten away from them. But if you are in motion and you're treading your tires in the same place, you're on the treadmill, it's active, but the terrain isn't changing because you're unwilling to go through the hard stuff, to take the small step, to perhaps trip and fall, to get knocked down, to face some criticism, to face the judgments, you will remain muted in your life. And being muted in your life turns inward and becomes one who is resentful of themselves. And why is a person resentful of themselves? They're resentful of themselves because they had a dream that they never actually went and pursued. Thought about it. Saw other people go. We go back to Jack and Tom. Jack was willing, you know what? Hey, maybe, I got the map here. It looks pretty straightforward. Let's be diligent and follow it. Tom, skeptic, said, well, let's see what happens for you, Jack. To me, that looks way too simple. It's got to be more difficult than that. It's got to be harder than that. It's got to be harder than to, just decide one day that you're going to start recording a podcast. It's got to be harder than that. Courtland, it's got to be harder than that. Have you seen the other podcasts that are out there? I mean, these things are actual freaking productions that takes weeks at a time to put together. Who are you in the sea of podcasts to do that? Well, we'll figure it out as we go. Well. If you wait. Before you start the business, you've got to have this recorded, and you've got to have this website, and you got to have this, and you got to have this, and you got to have this, right? And all of those things, though they may be true to the extent that they keep you stuck, that they keep you grounded, that they keep you from taking action, I'm telling you, it's justification for staying where you are. Every successful entrepreneur, and I'm talking about, what I would consider wildly successful. The one thing that they seem to have in common as they share about what it was like is they speak about starting and going or moving before you are actually ready. Every single one of them, to a T, they speak about don't wait to have the perfect plan in place because it's not going to go the way you thought it was going to go anyway. And so, what will it be for you? Continuing to justify the lack of movement because you're in motion? Or are you ready to truly see what life has to offer because you are seeing different terrain because you're in action? Here's a framework for you to do that. Okay, and it's why I say taking action is valuable. Number one, it helps you overcome your fears. See, the more we know about a thing, the less fearful of it we are. So when I am in motion and I'm looking to put a plan or a strategy in place to overcome the fears that I have, it actually serves the purpose of increasing the mountain that is the fear. Whereas when you take action, then that fear starts to dissipate. And what we know to be true is that fear is one of the biggest obstacles that we face. It can prevent you from taking risks, from trying new things, from pursuing your dreams. However, taking action is the way to overcome it because it gives you a sense of control and confidence once it's done. So the more you know about a thing, the less fearful of it you are. And when you've had the courage just one time to boldly face it, then it doesn't have the same effect. So when you take action towards your goals, then you feel more empowered and less afraid. It also serves not only overcoming fear, but it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a way for you to test your ideas. Another obstacle that entrepreneurs face is uncertainty. Does that make sense? You may have an idea for a product or service, but they're not sure if it'll work. Taking action can help entrepreneurs test their ideas and get the feedback. This helps refine the idea and make adjustments based on what works and what doesn't. So until it's in the hands of someone who's actually going to use it, until it's in the hands of someone who will actually appreciate it, then you don't really know. And maybe most importantly, so in addition to overcoming fear, being able to test the ideas, there's also the reality that by you being in action, you start to build momentum. And building momentum is essential. Okay, it is essential to a life of achievement and success. There's no question about it that when you're building momentum, it helps you to gain traction in your life and world. Taking action can also help you build momentum by creating a sense of progress and accomplishment. So once you start to see yourself winning a bit, once you start to see some successes start to pile up, then your belief about what you're capable of actually starts to grow and expand. Okay, so when you take action towards the goal, then you feel like you're making progress, which can motivate you to keep going and to keep doing it. As long as you're sitting and planning and strategizing, right, then you're going to only find more things to plan and strategize about. And also, it's about you being able to learn from the misses or to learn from the failures. It's, what we know is failure is inevitable. It's inevitable. However, it is also an opportunity to learn and grow. See, as I said earlier, if you've already determined that you're not going to quit, if you've already determined that you're not going to give up, then your winning is inevitable, and it's a matter of time. Now, I am not able to say how long it will be. A lot of times we want to know, well, exactly how many weeks, how many years, how many hours, how many days, how much time is it going to take? We're not able to give you that. I'm not able to say that, but I can say that if you've already predetermined that you're not going to quit, then if you're not going to quit, then your winning is inevitable. That's just how it is. So in your life and world, what I'm getting at is this is how it's time for you to unmute yourself. Somewhere along the way, you bought into an idea that it had to be perfect. Or maybe growing up, maybe your experience was that you felt loved and you felt acceptance based on performance, based on an achievement, or perhaps even obedience. So as long as you were obedient or you performed or you achieved something, then someone was proud of you. Someone shared with you some sense of some love or some affection. And so now it can be that your worth is tied to what you can accomplish and achieve. It actually has the inverse effect, though, because if your worthiness is on the line, then it will keep you from, hear this, if you feel that your worthiness is on the line, then it'll keep you from taking action in the first place. Because what if I fail? What if I don't succeed? What if I don't achieve? Then what? Who am I going to disappoint? And so the fear of disappointment can keep you stuck. But if you have a relationship with yourself that says, well, I love myself unconditionally, and my worth is not tied to what I accomplish or achieve. So therefore, I'm willing to go after it. I'm willing to go for it. And even if I fail, I'll be okay. I'll be able to bounce back because I love myself unconditionally. See, when your worth is not tied to outcomes, but you know that intrinsically you are worthy of love. Intrinsically, you are deserving of love and appreciation and acceptance, and you do that for yourself. When that is intrinsic, then there is not an external outcome that can sway that feeling. It doesn't happen. So then what? How do we move from motion to being in action? How do we then set it up to ensure that we're not just, spinning our wheels, but that we're actually seeing more of what life has to offer? It comes down to some things that are pretty simple. And in particular, what we're talking about is simply, I think it was James Clear who wrote the book Atomic Habits, who essentially, he sums it up this way. A common mistake that often happens to smart people, in many cases, without them even realizing it. And that mistake is they misunderstand the difference between being in motion and taking action. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning. All good things, but they don't produce a result. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. So what we're really talking about, the difference between motion and action, is the outcome. It's the result. If you're going to create for yourself a life that matters, it is imperative that you have a healthy relationship with the results. Some examples of that would include, and this is according to James Clear, says, if I outline 20 ideas for an article I want to write, that's motion. If I actually write and publish an article, that's action. If I email 10 new leads for my business and start conversations with them, that's motion. If they actually buy something and turn into a customer, that's action. Make sense? If I search for a better diet plan and read a few books on the topic, that's motion. If I actually eat a healthy meal, that's action. If I go to the gym and I ask about getting a personal trainer, that's motion. If I actually step under the bar and start doing squats, that's action. If I study for a test or prepare for a research project, that's motion. If I actually take the test or write my research paper, that's action. Sometimes motion is useful, but it will never produce an outcome by itself. It doesn't matter how many times you go talk to the personal trainer, that motion will never get you in shape. Only the action of working out will get you the result you're looking to achieve. And so, if motion doesn't lead to results, then why do we do it? Sometimes we do it because we actually need to plan or learn more, but more often than not, we do it because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. That's the reason we do it. We are in motion mostly because we're looking to avoid the pain of failure. It doesn't feel good to fail or be judged publicly, so we tend to avoid situations where that might happen, and that's the biggest reason why you slip into motion rather than taking action. You want to delay failure. So what do? Well, you got to first determine if whether or not you're a pain person or a pleasure person. Then determine what it is that you truly want. It's amazing to me how so often so much of this information goes back to Napoleon Hill's law of success. To know what you want. Be specific about a target, a definite chief aim. Determine what price you're willing to pay in order to get it. Because a price must be paid. And then, what actions will you take in order to achieve it? I hope this helps. If it does, don't keep it a secret. Let someone know that this podcast exists. That helps us grow. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, Instagram, Facebook, Courtland Warren. That helps more people know that this exists. And so if you got value, don't keep it a secret. Let someone know about it. And if there are more specific ways that you believe that we're able to help, then email us at info@courtlandwarren.com. Okay, that is how you reach us. And if there's a way for us to be of greater assistance, we're here to do it. We're here to help. You're not alone. You never have been. And that's the truth. Let's go.